everyone, Jessica here from Paper Ink Stamp, and welcome back to another card making video. So I've decided to go back through some of my older issues of Simply Cards and Papercraft and try and create a card using one of their free gifts. So I'm not 100% sure which issue this is from. It's from a little while ago. This is the Layering Peonies stamp. And the reason why I've decided to go back to one of the older free gifts is obviously the magazines aren't very frequent at the moment with everything that's going on. There is a little bit of backlog with all three of the magazines that I subscribe to. So that's Simply Cards and Papercraft, Die Cuts and Essentials, and Creative Stamping. It feels like such a long time ago since I actually had a new magazine, but I am hoping, I think there's one next week. But I'm not 100% sure, so I don't know when the next ones are going to be coming. So I thought we would just go back and look at some of the free gifts that we have received. So like I said, I picked up this layered peony. So there's 3 layering stamps in here. There's a couple of different sentiments. You've got a couple of leaves and then a couple of little buds and things in there as well. And you've also got 2 dies with this, one that cuts out the peony and one that will cut out the leaf. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple of these layered flowers. So the first stamp I'm going to start with is this, this full stamp. This is going to be the bottom layer because there's no detail. This is just going to give you a base and the general shape of the flower. And I'm starting then with that lightest colour. So I'm going to do all of these in a variation of blues. So this stamp, I'm using my Prism ink pads, and this is using the Arctic Mist colour, have to remember. And a couple of comments that I've had in the past is to allow your stamps to sit on the surface just a little bit longer, just to allow that colour to kind of soak into the paper a little bit more. So I am giving that a go here. I did find in some areas it didn't necessarily work, it moved just a little bit, but generally I thought it was a good tip. So you can see that I'm just kind of trying to leave it there just a little bit longer to help get that sort of full coverage. And now we've got our base down, we're going to go then with the image that has got more of the detail. So the 3 stamps, you've got the base, you've got that middle shaded detail, and then you have the outline. So you can see that I've stamped 2 here. I do end up creating 3 of these, but the second one that I stamp on the left hand side, that one doesn't end up coming out too well, and we'll look at that in a second. But now what I'm going to do is stamp my next layer in a darker colour. So when you are using layering stamps, excuse my head there, when you're using layering stamps, you want to start with your lightest colour at the base, and then you want to get darker and darker as you add more layers. And this is then going to add those really beautiful shadows. So you can see here it's adding the shadows of the flower, but also then it's giving that depth and dimension. So I've done that first one, now I'm going to do the second one, and it's pretty easy to line up. The first one I took a lot more care with it just to try and work out how this layered, but then when I did the rest of them I found that it worked a lot easier because I knew which sections I needed to line up. So at the bottom you've got that kind of V shape, I just made sure that I lined those up. So that middle colour I used was Blue Lagoon, so it was darker, and now I'm going to have a go at stamping the outline, and I'm using the Nautical Blue for this, and this is where I think it kind of ruined it. So I couldn't get it to line up properly. I don't know whether you would have to stamp the outline first and then kind of go back with it and do the base, but I couldn't line it up, and then I didn't think it looked as nice having that darker blue border. So the 3 flowers that I create to actually go on the card, I actually only do the base and then that second stamp. I don't bother with that outline. So you can see I've got the 1 flower on the right hand side. This is going to be one of the ones that I use. And then I wanted to create 2 more flowers, and I wanted to sort of vary the looks of these, so I used different combinations of colour. So for the second one, I decided to go a shade darker. So my base stamp, I'm going to stamp in this Blue Lagoon, and then I'm going to stamp that detailed stamp then with that Nautical Blue, which is that much deeper blue colour. You can see with this base, it is a little bit blotchy. There's some areas that didn't stamp, and that's because I didn't leave it as long. Perhaps if I had, it might have then given me a better base coverage, but because we're adding that detail stamp as well, I wasn't too kind of worried about it. So you can see the one that we're stamping now, I used then for the base, the Nautical Blue, And then for the top layer, which I think this one looks really, really beautiful, I use then that darker navy blue as well. So it's just always making sure that you're layering with a darker colour the more stamps you use. I think getting these Prism ink pads are really great, especially if you want to have a bigger selection of inks. I do think the price point is really great with these to try and get that full kind of collection, to be able to use layering stamps and things like this, because it gives you that bit of variety. So you can see as well, I'm just fussy cutting them. So as I said, there are 2 dies that came with this set, but I found that the die for the peony, it just didn't fit properly. It was too big, it was a little bit misshapen. So I am just going to fussy cut these with a small border around the edge. Because you guys have seen me fussy cut before, I am just going to skip past this bit, but I'm literally just going around. I'm just moving the paper instead of the scissors, and I'm trying to get a nice even border around the edge. So you can see there are our fussy cut peonies, and I think they look really great. I love that different combination of all 3. They're all slightly different, and I love that just instead of having the outline to give you that definition, you've just got that second layering stamp, and that gives it that little bit of detail and it gives it that shape. But now we can get started actually creating our card. So now for our background, I wanted to have something a little bit interesting, but that didn't take too much focus from those flowers. So I'm going to take a sheet of the Craft Perfect Misty Grey cardstock. This is, I showed you in a previous haul video for February. I did purchase this from Tonic Studios. So I thought this would go really nicely with the embossing folder that I've picked, and also then with those blues as well. So the embossing folder I've got is this kind of checkered diagonal. I'm not really sure what it's called, but it is from Sizzix. This is just one that I got from my nan's stash, and I thought this would look really beautiful in this background. Like I said, it's something that just gives the background a little bit of interest, but it doesn't pull focus from anything. So all I've done is I've just popped my embossing folder over the cardstock, and I've just trimmed that down so I can have a piece that's slightly bigger than my embossing folder, and then I can just run this through my Gemini. So I've run that through, and you'll be able to see just that really beautiful pattern that is now on that great cardstock. So this is the weaved pattern cardstock as well. So not only do you have that embossing design from the embossing folder, but you've also got that textured weave cardstock that I just think adds a little bit of elegance to it. And I think this is going to look great then with our peony flowers. It's going to go really nicely with those blues. And this kind of colour combination and the flowers and the sort of subtlety here of the card, I think would be great for lots of different occasions. I think it's going to be perfect for a birthday card, which we're going to be creating today, but also for something like a sympathy card, because it's not big and bold and in your face. So what I'm going to do is trim down this embossed panel. So the card that we're going to be making today is 6 by 4 inch. So it's just going to be sort of a regular small card. And then I'm just going to trim down then my embossed panel to fit that, where then we'll still have that nice border around the outside. One quick thing I want to mention about the guillotine itself is obviously I bought this, I think it was this month I got it. It was in a recent haul video. If you are looking at getting a mini guillotine, I would really recommend this Tim Holtz Tonic mini guillotine. It's 6 inch, it's small and compact, but I find that I can do so much unless I'm obviously cutting past 6 inch. This is now what I reach for. I don't use that Fiskars one anymore. I think it's perfect. It's great quality. Really great size, and it means that it actually fits on my desk with a lot more ease. So if you are looking for one, I would highly recommend this particular one. Okay, so back to our card. So I've got a piece of black cardstock here. So I'm going to white heat emboss our sentiment. So I've taken the happy birthday from the layered peony stamp set. So there are, you can see just to the side, you've got congratulations, happy birthday, lots of little sentiments in there. Thinking of you, I think, is one of them as well. So a really great kind of all around sentiments in this stamp set. So I'm going to stamp that with my Versamark clear embossing ink. I have used my anti-static powder bag as well, just to stop the embossing powder sticking to anything. And then I'm just going to sprinkle on the Sweet Dixie Glacier White embossing powder, and then I can just tap off any of the excess. If you get any bits that are of the embossing powder that are stuck where you don't want it to be, you can just take a dry paintbrush and you can just wipe those sections off. And then we're going to heat set that with our heat gun. Once that's heat set, then I'm going to go ahead and just trim this down. And again, you can see that I'm using the top, I'm using the bottom of the trimmer, whichever end of it really helps the most to be able to cut, smaller pieces down like this, but it is just absolutely brilliant. So now we've got our sentiment done, we can go ahead and start popping our card together. So the first thing that I'm going to do is pop some purple tape onto the back of our embossed panel. So the back of this is mostly flat. Obviously you do have the indentations into it, but it sticks really nicely. I do find with other embossing folders, if you don't have much flat surface, sometimes it's easier to use double-sided tape or even a liquid glue as well, but I'm just using my purple tape runner here. And then I'm going to pop this. This is just a pre-scored card base, and then we're just going to pop our panel in the middle. That gives us again that really beautiful white border. And I actually really like the colour of this Misty Ocean cardstock. I think it goes really nicely. It's not sort of too bold. It just gives a really nice subtle background. For the bottom two flowers, I'm just going to use some of the Hunky Dory liquid glue, and the reason that I've picked this is because you've got those embossed lines. Again, I want to make sure that it's going to stick down. So what I'm going to do is just pop that down into place, and then I'm going to pop an acrylic block on top just to help adhere that. So I do find that I need to just leave it for a little bit to actually get it to stick down, because it does sort of peel up in some areas, but that might be more to do with where I actually popped the glue rather than sort of the glue itself. But if you just leave your acrylic block on there, then that will just help let them dry flat. So for my middle flower, I've just popped some mini foam squares onto the back of this just to add some adhesive to it. So I'm just going to peel off the backing, and so you can see that I've got my lighter colour on the left, my darker flower on the right, and then obviously we've got our medium colour in the middle. But obviously you can kind of configure this however you want to. I thought it'd be nice going across because they are a really, really nice size. The actual peony themselves is a really great size. For just an added element, I've cut a scrap piece of cardstock. This is the Craft Perfect Weave Navy colour. So I've just cut a small piece of this, and I've done a diagonal cut on the end. And then we're going to use this to kind of mount our sentiment on again, just to give the card a little bit more interest. Because then it's going to go over the flower that's been propped up with the foam pads, I've put foam pads on the one end that isn't going to be supported, and then I'm going to pop glue on the bit that's going to go across the flower itself. And that's going to help give it the most amount of stability. So once I've got that stripped down, then I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing again with then the Happy Birthday sentiment strip. So I'm going to pop some foam pads on the section that's not going to be propped up, and then I've just popped a little bit glue on the section that's going to go over the flower. And again, you could put an acrylic block on top of this just to help sort of hold that flat, and then just allow that Hunky Dory glue to actually dry. So the last thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of embellishment. I'm going to use 2 of my new Nuvo crystal drops. So I've gone with the Simply White, and then we've got the Ivory Seashell. So I think the white is really beautiful. I'm really glad that I picked this one up. And then I was looking for kind of a grey, quite a subtle colour, and I'm glad then that I did pick up this Ivory Seashell, because I think this is really beautiful. I think this goes really nicely with that grey cardstock as well, but it's got a really beautiful kind of shimmer to it. So there was a comment, I did make a comment in my haul video when I was looking at these to say that they didn't flatten out when you kind of tap them. They don't flatten out like the cheaper Dovecraft ones that I was using. But I do believe that they are self-leveling, so you don't get that peak. That's the one thing I always used to kind of struggle with. They do end up being quite nice, but they just don't flatten out like that cheaper product does. But the other thing, well, I think there was a lady commented on that video saying that it could be to do with the weather. I think you're probably right, it is absolutely freezing here at the moment. But what I did do before using them was just to kind of roll them in my hands, just to kind of warm them up a little bit. And I think I'm going to have to use them a few more times just to see if that really does make a difference. But I wonder, maybe leave me a comment down below if you have got a lot of experience using these. Maybe they don't flatten out how they will with those cheaper Dovecraft products. Maybe I'm trying to get it to do something they're not supposed to do. But I still think, like I said, because they're self-leveling, I was really happy actually with how how they now look, and what kind of look I'm getting on my cards. I do really, really like them. But that is then this card finished. So like I said at the beginning, I'm not 100% sure what's happening with the magazines at the moment. I know, of course, there is going to be a backlog with everything going on. So it might be that I go back to some previous issues that we've got, reusing those kind of products. I don't have sort of I don't have any new products that I've purchased at the moment. It's just trying to come up with different ideas to share with you guys. Of course, the magazines is the main point of my channel because I do subscribe to 3 of them. With not getting them at the minute, you might be seeing sort of less videos that I'm creating, but I am trying to sort of come up with other content for you guys that you might find interesting. So if there is anything that you want to see, or if you've got any ideas to help me create content for you guys, then leave me a comment down below. That would be really helpful. But hopefully we will be getting a magazine through the post very soon. So that's our card finished for today. If you have enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button and that bell notification so you don't miss out on any of my future uploads. But that's it for today. Thanks very much for watching and happy crafting.